We'll start today with Canada's urgent search for new markets. Canada-U.S. trade talks are on ice, and the American ambassador says it won't be easy to restart negotiations. Cue another international tour. This week, Prime Minister Mark Carney was courting investment and trade opportunities in the United Arab Emirates and meeting with world leaders in South Africa at the G20. Will those meetings result in new markets? International Trade Minister Maninder Sidhu joins me now to talk about that. Hi, Minister. It's a pleasure to meet you. Pleasure to have you on our program today. Thanks for making the time.
Thanks, Vashti, for having me and for joining me here in Brampton.
So toward the end of the week, you made a very specific announcement about finding new markets, but building up the infrastructure in this country through a $6 billion investment to do that. And in the press release for it, your government says that what you are announcing with respect to that investment will generate an additional $300 billion in trade. My first question to you, Minister, is how do you know that?
Well, if you look at what we're doing here, we're trying to open new markets, opening new markets around the world, emerging markets in Indo-Pacific, in Europe. We've set an ambitious target of $300 billion in non-U.S. exports within the next 10 years. And the demand is real. It's there. I'm traveling around the world. People are asking about our energy, around our agriculture, around our innovation, our technology. And so we need to drive that forward by opening up new trade agreements. And that's what exactly the Prime Minister is doing, what I've been focused on in new markets. You know, today in the UAE, $70 billion announcement for investments coming into Canada from the UAE. My very first task when I was assigned as Trade Minister back in May was to get the FIPA done, the Investment Protection Agreement done. That's been going on since 2014. I work with my counterpart directly, Dr. Khaled, to get it done, and the Prime Minister just signed it the other day. And so this is how we're going to move forward. This is how we're going to attract the big investments coming into our country. But today's announcement is about $6 billion in trade corridors, infrastructure funding. You talk about ports, you talk about intermodal sites. We need that because at the current capacity, if we want to hit $300 billion of non-U.S. exports, we need to add capacity at our ports, at our intermodal terminals like we are here in Brampton.
How do you know, though, that it's going to lead to $300 billion? And I ask because you say it yourself, right? That's a very ambitious number. It's a huge number, despite the fact that the previous Liberal government signed or improved on 8 massive free trade deals. We were never able to diversify away from a reliance on the United States. I understand it's a different moment contextually right now, but how do you know that $6 billion of improvements to trade infrastructure will lead to, as your press release specifies, $300 billion extra dollars?
Well, we're in a different world right now, Basti, from when we were even just last year. I spent 13 years in the private sector facilitating international trade with hundreds of businesses prior to politics. And back then, it was all about the U.S. I'm comfortable with the environment. I know where it is. I know the requirements. I understand the language. Now businesses are coming to us, asking us to open new markets, to take that risk. And so the energy is very different than when it was in the past. And I know with what we're putting in terms of money in our budget, through Can Export, through SME Export Readiness Program, through EDC, we're creating an ecosystem to support businesses to get out there and diversify trade. Look, 25 years ago, trade with the U.S. was almost 90%. Now it's down to around 75%. And I know, look, the U.S. will always be an important trading partner, but we need to make sure that we're creating more opportunities for Canadian businesses, and that's exactly the mandate that Canadians have given us.
I guess what I would respectfully challenge you with is, I understand that you're trying to set the conditions, but so was the previous government for the last 10 years, right? You're referencing a number of decades ago. Over the last 10 years, it pretty much stayed at 75% of all of our exports going to the United States. But under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Liberals signed Canada-Ukraine Free Trade, CETA, CPTPP, CUSMA, well, separate from CUSMA, Chile, Israel, United Kingdom, like a whole bunch of free trade agreements that did not materialize in a germane difference. And I wonder what you would tell Canadians today is so different about this, other than Donald Trump doesn't want as much of our business.
Well, the difference is the government can set the policies, you know, every day of the week, but until businesses start using those policies, those trade agreements, it's not going to move the needle. And now businesses are now matching the energy of the government, saying we want to get into new diversified markets, help us get there. You look at the Can Export funding, we're revitalizing that program. 65% of the funding roughly was used for U.S. diversification efforts in the past. I'm looking at that program and saying, okay, how can we utilize that program so we're targeting other markets outside the U.S. To diversify trade? And so there's a big difference than what was happening last year in our country to what it is now, where business energy is at. We talk with the boards of trade. I spent some time with them all summer, the last few months. The chambers of commerce are all asking for this. They're asking now to help them get into new external markets. Yes, trade diversification is not unique. It's been talked about in the past, but what's different now is the business environment. It's what businesses are now matching the energy of the government, saying, we're going to join you. We want to utilize your trade agreements, existing trade agreements too. You can sign new trade agreements. That's also going to work wonders, but also utilizing, for example, you mentioned CETA. CETA is utilized roughly 65% right now. And so how do we get utilization rates up of our 15 trade agreements with 51 countries? That's also very important. That's why we're stepping up. We're supporting businesses through the CAN Export program, through SME export readiness, and of course through EDC with more export financing.
I want to ask about two potential markets. You mentioned the Indo-Pacific. You just returned, if I'm not incorrect, from India. What is your government's goal with India? Is it to restart negotiations on a formalized free trade pact?
So I was in India last week to scope out areas of opportunities. You talk about energy, infrastructure, AI, education, and mining. You look at what India is doing, the fifth largest economy in the world, destined to be third. They need 70% more energy by 2040. They're looking around in global markets for energy, and we need to show up as a country. You know, every other country is focused on diversification. They're showing up, they're ambitious, they're aggressive, and we're matching that energy. We need to show up exactly what the Prime Minister is doing now to pitch Canada, pitch our innovation, pitch our resources. And so we've got 7 LNG projects in development. We've got the energy that the world needs. India is growing 7-8% year over year. They need energy, they need food. We've got both of those things. And so I took the opportunity in India to scope out areas that we can work together to collaborate and move forward on investments and on trade.
I have a number of follow-up questions on that, but respectfully, it didn't answer the substance of my question, which is, what is the position of your government on restarting free trade negotiations for a formalized agreement with India?
So what I'd say to that is new government, new prime minister, new mandate, and so, you know, restarting existing trade agreement would be off the table. It would be starting afresh to look at new opportunities and scope it out. And so that's what we're focused on when you look at India, when you talk about what we did with the Philippines, launching trade negotiations with Thailand. So we're scoping various opportunities in the Indo-Pacific, but also in the European markets.
Would you start negotiations on a new free trade agreement with India?
Well, right now we're scoping out opportunities. I don't want to get ahead of myself here. We want to make sure that we're matching the energy. We're making sure that businesses are in alignment with us. You know, my constituents are asking for more connectivity between Canada and India, and so that was part of my discussions last week of how we can get more flights going. Because, you know, I think it's important for your viewers to know that roughly 10 or 11% of our trade moves through our airports. So we need more flight connectivity if we're going to hit that $300 billion target.
I want to also ask, when you mentioned the potential for exporting LNG, for example, to India, I spoke a number of weeks ago with the Indian High Commissioner, the new one who's here. I asked him flat out the exact question, you know, do you want Canadian LNG given the energy needs in India? And he said yes, but he does not consider Canada, the government of India does not consider Canada a reliable partner. Does your government, Minister, consider India a reliable partner, given the fact that the previous Prime Minister accused the government of being connected to serious criminal activity in this country?
So public safety of Canadians is this government's first and foremost priority. It's why in Budget 2025 we've we've brought forward 1,000 more CBSA officers, funding for 1,000 more RCMP officers to fight foreign interference, to fight transnational repression, to battle organized crime. This is what this government is stepping up to. We're brought forward Bill C-2 to give law enforcement more tools for investigative, you know, in extortion cases and other types of cases. And so we're stepping up to protect Canadians. But at the same time, my job as the trade minister is on the economic side to scope out economic opportunities and grow trade with nations around the world. I sat down with the Minister Hardeep Puri, India's petroleum and natural gas minister, when I was in India last week. And they are looking at opportunities in Canada here. In fact, Minister Goyal, my counterpart, we'll be bringing forward a delegation of trade and investors to Canada early next year to look at more opportunity. And so this is the energy that we're seeing here in Canada, and not just from one country. We're seeing that from all around the world.
I understand all those points, and I appreciate them. And I appreciate the fact that your government would want to separate, you know, the issue of public safety or the issue of a view of a certain country's government from the economic opportunities that exist. But if there is one thing that what's happened over the last year with Donald Trump and the U.S. has taught us, is that that is not always the case. So my question to you was, India says we're not yet a reliable trading partner. Do you believe, given what their government has been accused of by our government, that India is a reliable trading partner?
What I would say, it requires dialogue, and that's what we're doing. We're having conversations at the highest of levels in different tracks. We do have a law enforcement collaboration track going on at the same time to make sure that we're talking about public safety, to make sure that communities are safe in both countries, and that's very important to have. You know, you go back to the G7 with Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Carney's conversations. It was on economic collaboration, but also on transnational repression, and I think that's very important. With dialogue, if you're sitting at the table, you can work through many different challenges, but also scope out opportunities, and that's exactly what I took the opportunity to do last week.
Do I infer from that that you do consider India to be reliable if you are going to embark on an expanded trade relationship?
Well, what I would say is scoping out areas of opportunities and letting our businesses lead. So currently the conversations are with our boards of trade, with our chambers, with CEOs, saying what more can we do? You look at our pension funds, they're doing $107 billion already in India. India is doing, I think, close to $7 or $8 billion this way. And so I took the opportunity last week to sit down with some of the investors in India to say, hey, come to Canada. We are a reliable and stable trading partner. This is why I'm getting so many calls from around the world that we want to do more with Canada.
Okay, Minister, I'll leave it on that note. I appreciate your time very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Vashi.
Thanks a lot. Minister of International Trade, Maninder Sidhu there. Coming up, we're going to talk to Ontario's representative in Washington, David Patterson. He was the subject of a lot of reports about a big fight that U.S. Ambassador Pete Huckstra launched on him at an event here in Ottawa. We'll get his side of the story next.